I always thought my life was quietly perfect. I had a stable job in HR at a reputable company, a decent apartment just outside the city, and a fiancé who everyone described as a catch. Eric wasn't flashy, but he was smooth in the way that got him exactly where he needed to be. We met at work. He was in marketing, creative, talkative, a natural storyteller, and I was the calm in the storm that was employee drama. Somehow, between policy meetings and catered luncheons, we ended up falling in love. My family adored him. My mom, especially. She said he had the kind of smile that made people feel safe. I believed that, for a long time. It was Christmas when everything fell apart, but I didn't know it at the time. My mom always hosted Christmas Eve, and the tradition was to bring out the old photo albums after dinner. It sounds corny, but it was comforting, seeing pictures from ski trips, birthdays, backyard barbecues. This year, Eric sat beside me on the floor while my mom flipped pages and pointed out cousins we hadn't seen in years. Everything felt normal until it didn't. She turned a page and there it was, a photo from a vacation she took alone to Europe almost 15 years ago. She was smiling beside a group of strangers on a cobbled street, all toasting drinks. I remember the caption she'd scribbled beneath it years ago, Barcelona, 2010. The summer that changed everything. At the time, I thought she meant the food or the culture. But this time, Eric leaned forward slowly, squinting at the photo like he was seeing a ghost. Then he whispered, "Don't you see it?" I asked him what he meant, but his face had gone pale. He whispered again, softer this time, "Do you see it too?" Then he stood up and mumbled something about needing fresh air before disappearing down the hallway. I laughed awkwardly, brushed it off, and told my mom he probably had too much wine. But something about the way he looked at that picture, it gnawed at me for the rest of the evening. The next morning, I brought it up while we were making coffee. I asked what he saw in the photo, and he avoided my eyes. He said he just thought someone looked familiar, probably a colleague's parent or something. But the way he said it, like he was trying to convince himself more than me, didn't sit right. I'd worked in HR long enough to know when someone was lying. And Eric, he was lying. I went back to my mom's house under the excuse of dropping off her Christmas gift, but I really just wanted to look at that photo again. She handed it over without a second thought. I scanned it with my phone and took it home. That night, I stared at it for hours. There was my mom, holding a glass of sangria, grinning beside a tall man with dark blonde hair and a smirk that looked irritatingly familiar. The more I stared at him, the more my stomach twisted. His face wasn't exactly like Eric's, but there was something about the eyes. The way they half crinkled when he smiled. I ran a reverse image search, just to rule out the insane thought crawling through my brain. Nothing came up. But now I couldn't sleep. I went to the linen closet and dug out the old plastic bin where I kept printed photos from college and early dating. I found one from a company Halloween party, the first time Eric had come as my plus one. Side by side, the similarities were impossible to ignore. The man in Barcelona could have been Eric's older brother. Or his father. I didn't say anything for days. I walked around the apartment like a ghost, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't. It got worse when I asked Eric again, more directly this time, if he'd ever been to Spain. He hesitated just long enough to make me feel sick. He said no, of course not, but he didn't ask why I was asking. That's what did it. If someone accused me of something random like that, I'd ask what the hell they were talking about. He didn't. I needed answers, and I knew I wouldn't get them from him. So I called my cousin Mia, who's the unofficial family archivist. She remembered the Barcelona trip. She said our mom had come back glowing, said it was the most alive she'd felt in years. I asked if she ever mentioned a man. Mia hesitated, then said, "Now that you mention it, there was some talk. Mom disappeared for a few days on that trip. She said she went off with an artist or a musician or something. Said it was a fling." I thanked her and hung up, heart racing. My mother had never dated again after my dad passed. Or at least, she'd never told me she did. But what if she had? What if she'd had a fling that turned into something more? What if that man in the photo wasn't just a stranger? I remembered something else. Eric once told me his dad died when he was young, and that his mom raised him alone. But he never talked about his father. Almost like there was nothing to say. The next morning, I took the risk and asked my mom. I didn't show her the photo yet. I just asked if she'd ever dated someone seriously after Dad. Her face changed. She gave me that look mothers give when they know the conversation's about to go somewhere painful. She said she'd fallen in love once, unexpectedly, but it didn't last. He had a son back in the States. She never met the boy. The timing was all wrong. I asked his name. She said, Daniel Hartwell. I couldn't breathe. Eric's full name? Eric Daniel Hartwell. I didn't tell her. Not yet. I left that day with the photo album under my arm and the weight of a truth too sickening to fully understand. Eric, my fiancé, might be my half-brother. And the worst part? He might have known. Maybe not at first. But now I was sure, he saw it in the photo that night. That's why he whispered. That's why he froze. He recognized his own father. And he still kissed me that night. I didn't sleep for days after confirming the name. Every time I looked at Eric, I wondered how far this lie went. Was he just as blindsided as me, or had he known and buried it because it was inconvenient? I kept replaying that moment by the fireplace, when he whispered, "Do you see it too?" like some puzzle piece had clicked into place for him. And then he lied. The second he said he thought it was someone's parent, I knew he wasn't confused, he was hiding something. But I needed to be sure before I lost everything. I asked him, gently, to tell me more about his dad. He shrugged it off the way people do when they've rehearsed a vague story too many times. Died young. Hard-working man. Raised by his mom in New Jersey. I pressed for details. He didn't have any. No photos. No birth certificate. Not even a name. Just Dad. That was the first time I saw him flinch when I mentioned the name Daniel. He covered it quickly, like a cough. Said he thought that was familiar because his mom had a friend with that name years ago. I asked for the friend's last name. He didn't have one. So I called his mom. We weren't close, just polite. But I had her number from when we planned our engagement party. I waited until I was sure Eric wouldn't be home, then dialed. I told her we were working on a family tree project, trying to trace roots for our future kids, and could she remind me of Eric's father's full name? The silence on the other end was almost theatrical. Then she asked, "Why are you asking now?" I told her again, gently, about the family tree. Her voice softened, but what she said next made my stomach drop. I never told Eric his father's real name. He was a mistake. A summer fling that left me pregnant. I told him as I almost dropped the phone. I asked her if she remembered who the man was. She said she never got a full name, just Daniel, an American artist traveling through Spain. The timing matched perfectly. The trip. The names. The age gap. The face in the photo. All of it. My mother and Eric's mother had slept with the same man in the same summer. And both had sons. But only one of us knew it might be a shared father. I asked her one last question. Did Eric ever ask about his father in recent years? She hesitated, then said, he asked a few months ago. Said he was having dreams, déjà vu. I thought maybe he just missed having a dad. That was it. That was the proof I needed. He had suspicions. Maybe not confirmation, but enough to say something. And he didn't. He kissed me, proposed to me, planned a life with me, knowing there was a chance I was his blood relative. I confronted him the next night. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just laid out the facts. The photo. The timeline. The name. His mom's confession. My mother's. He sat there like stone, not even trying to interrupt. When I finally asked, "Did you know?" his eyes went glassy. He said, "Not at first. But when I saw that photo at Christmas, I just knew. I saw his face. I saw your mom's. And I knew." He tried to justify it. Said it was too late, that he was already in love, that he didn't want to lose me. That maybe we weren't even related, that maybe we were just two unlucky people in a weird coincidence. But I wasn't buying it. He had doubts and kept them to himself. He put his comfort above my right to know. That wasn't love. That was selfishness wearing a ring. I ended the engagement that night. Gave him back the ring without a single tear. He asked where I was going to go. I said anywhere that didn't have his last name on the mailbox. He didn't follow me. He didn't fight. He just sat there and watched me pack. You'd think that would be the end. You'd hope that kind of nuclear bomb would be enough drama for one lifetime. But the real betrayal was still coming. I returned to work after the holidays, expecting to bury myself in spreadsheets and silence. But the whispers started almost immediately. People gave me looks in the break room. Someone asked if I was okay. Another coworker, someone I barely spoke to, gave me a hug and said, "Men are trash." That's when I knew Eric had been talking. And not just talking. Lying. He'd spun a story about how I got cold feet, how I'd had a meltdown at Christmas and accused him of cheating with no evidence. I hadn't even told anyone what actually happened yet, because how do you even say that out loud? But somehow, he had already painted himself as the wounded, loyal fiancé dumped by an unstable HR rep. Even worse, he'd started getting close to someone in my department, Mandy, one of the junior analysts I'd mentored when she started. I walked into the break room and saw them laughing, her hand on his shoulder, their body language so intimate it made me physically sick. I wanted to believe it was just a rebound. But deep down, I knew it wasn't new. I remembered the late nights he stayed at work. The texts he'd ignored. The times he'd come home already showered. I ran a quiet background check on our internal systems. Nothing unethical, just checked timestamps on reports and shared logs. His access history showed multiple logins from Mandy's terminal, long after normal hours. They were already involved. Before Christmas. Before the photo. Before the truth. And the final insult? My own manager, Cynthia, who I'd worked with for 5 years, started freezing me out. Meetings were rescheduled without me. Reports I usually reviewed were sent directly to Eric. I asked her about it, and she smiled and said she thought I needed space. But I knew better. She and Eric had always had a weird dynamic. She called him bright, future leadership material. She once said, "Eric has potential if he just ditches the emotional baggage." The emotional baggage was me. So there I was, engaged to my half-brother, lied to by the man I loved, cheated on with a coworker, and now being iced out at the job I'd helped build from the ground up. I should have felt broken. But instead, I felt something else entirely. When you've been humiliated in love and ambushed at work all within the same month, something inside you either breaks or sharpens. I didn't break. I sharpened. For the first time in years, I stopped being passive. I stopped being the peacemaker. I stopped smoothing things over and started paying attention. Because the truth was, this wasn't just about a ruined engagement or an ugly breakup. It was about betrayal on every level, from the man I planned to marry, from the coworker I mentored, and from the manager I trusted to have my back. And I wasn't going to let them walk over me like I was disposable. I started small. No emotion. No drama. Just observation. I watched the emails Eric forwarded to Mandy. I watched the projects Cynthia started reassigning. I noticed the way Mandy would arrive late but still log full hours, and how Eric's login activity matched hers, even when they were supposedly working remotely from different locations. It didn't take long to start connecting dots. I wasn't just being pushed out of the inner circle, I was being erased, professionally and personally. But the real turning point came when I discovered the promotion memo. It was sitting in the draft folder of Cynthia's assistant, who'd forgotten to sign out of a shared system. The draft named Eric as the new strategic lead for employee engagement, my role, rebranded. My projects, his name. My systems, his benefit. Cynthia had even written a paragraph about how Eric's dedication and resilience during recent transitions proved his value. There was no mention of me at all. That's when I knew this wasn't just personal. It was coordinated. Cynthia was helping Eric take my place. And Mandy? She was being prepped to slide into my old position under him. It was a sweep, clean, calculated, and corporate. But they underestimated one thing: I knew the HR system better than anyone. Every approval, every audit, every breadcrumb left behind by people who think their ambition makes them invisible, I could trace all of it. So I started collecting. Carefully. Professionally. I requested reports, archived correspondence, documented inconsistencies. I stayed late and used the excuse of cleaning up year-end files. I created a secure folder outside the system and mirrored every piece of relevant data. Emails that hinted at favoritism. Meeting notes that were altered after the fact. Timesheets that didn't add up. One email thread even revealed Cynthia coaching Mandy on how to mirror upper leadership language to sound more competent in front of clients. She wrote, "It doesn't matter what she knows, she's too emotional to scale." I was she. They weren't just replacing me, they were mocking me while doing it. The final piece of the puzzle came from a compliance report. One of the perks of working in HR was access to system metadata. Eric and Mandy had submitted overlapping expense reports for the same hotel. On a weekend they claimed to be traveling separately for unrelated tasks. I filed it away and made copies. I wasn't ready to blow it up yet. Not until it could count. Once my case was complete, I scheduled a confidential meeting with internal ethics. I didn't go in angry. I went in polished. I didn't cry or rant. I presented a detailed timeline, supported by hard evidence, misconduct, favoritism, misappropriation of resources, and HR code violations. They asked me why I didn't come forward sooner. I looked them straight in the eye and said, because I wanted to make sure they didn't get away with it. From there, it moved fast. Internal audit launched an investigation. Emails were pulled. Expense reports were frozen. Interview requests went out. Suddenly, the people who whispered about me were whispering about Cynthia. About Eric. About Mandy. The office got quiet in that way it only does when people are scared they might be next. Eric tried to play the victim at first, but he wasn't prepared for the paper trail. Cynthia stopped talking altogether, claiming she was being targeted. Mandy cried in the bathroom, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I just sat at my desk, doing my job, answering questions from legal when asked, and waited for the dust to settle. And when it did, the fallout was brutal. Cynthia was suspended indefinitely, pending a full review of her managerial conduct and conflict of interest breaches. Eric's promotion was revoked. Mandy was reassigned pending disciplinary review for falsified documentation. All of it quietly confirmed in an all-staff memo that used the words internal restructuring due to compliance findings. But I wasn't staying. I didn't want their apology. I wanted their silence when they realized I was the reason their plan fell apart. While the investigation was still unfolding, I sent out my resume to a competitor, an HR consultancy firm known for actually valuing employee ethics. The offer came within 2 weeks. They offered me a title bump and a better salary. I accepted without hesitation. Before leaving, I scheduled one final meeting, an exit interview with upper leadership. They expected a quiet departure. Instead, I gave them a concise, emotionless summary of how they'd failed to protect their employees, enabled a toxic culture, and lost one of their best HR leads because of internal corruption. They sat in silence. I shook hands, walked out, and never looked back. They never saw it coming. Because I didn't scream. I didn't post vague messages or start office wars. I just watched, collected, and waited. And then I dropped the match. After I walked out of that exit interview, I didn't look back. Not once. The moment the office doors closed behind me, it felt like I was peeling off a layer of skin I'd outgrown years ago but had convinced myself still fit. I took a deep breath, exhaled 3 years of betrayal, stress, and silence, and walked into a version of myself I hadn't met before, one who didn't let things slide anymore. The new job started 2 weeks later. I didn't take time off. I didn't need to. I was done healing through distraction. I was ready to build something that didn't rely on anyone else's broken sense of loyalty. The consultancy firm I joined was everything my old company pretended to be. Transparent leadership. Clear ethics. No favoritism. They actually read resumes before promoting someone, which already felt like a miracle. On my second week, I was asked to lead a training session on ethical workplace leadership. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. But I did it. I stood in front of a group of people and taught them how to prevent exactly the kind of nightmare I'd just escaped, all while knowing I'd lived every example I gave. Around the same time, news from my old job started trickling in through industry gossip. Eric was officially demoted and quietly pushed into a non-client-facing role. His new relationship with Mandy had imploded under the weight of public humiliation. Apparently, she found out about the other women he'd been texting while he was still engaged to me. One of them was someone from IT. Another was a married executive assistant. Mandy confronted him in the office and allegedly threw a stapler. She was put on probation and later resigned. Cynthia, my ex-manager, took early retirement a few weeks after the investigation wrapped up. Not a soul posted about it on LinkedIn. No going away lunch. Just a one-line announcement buried in a Monday email. She vanished from the professional world like a ghost with a tarnished legacy. Last I heard, she tried launching her own consulting firm and couldn't secure a single client. For me, I flourished. Slowly, steadily, and without theatrics. I rebuilt my confidence from the ground up. I started therapy, not because I felt broken, but because I wanted to understand how I had missed so many signs for so long. I learned that being kind doesn't mean letting people rewrite your story. That love isn't supposed to come with conditions or confusion. That silence, when it comes to truth, is its own betrayal. The hardest part, surprisingly, wasn't letting go of Eric. It was forgiving myself for believing in him. For trusting his word over my gut. For ignoring red flags just because I wanted the fairy tale. But once I forgave myself, I didn't carry the shame anymore. I carried the lesson that my family eventually learned the truth, though not all of it. I spared my mother the full devastation. I never told her that the man she fell for in Spain fathered 2 kids through 2 women who never met, who almost married each other out of pure chance and ignorance. She didn't need to know that detail. I told her it didn't work out, and that I was moving forward. She hugged me and said, "Good. You were always meant for more than safe." I never told her what she'd really saved me from. Christmas came around again the following year. I went to the family gathering with a store-bought pie and a new job title, Director of Talent Integrity. Everyone smiled and said I looked different, calmer, more powerful. No one mentioned Eric. His name had faded like a bad memory the family collectively chose to forget. That night, when the photo albums came out, I excused myself. Not out of fear, but because I didn't need to dig through old moments to prove how far I'd come. I already knew. I was no longer the woman who sat quietly beside a man who whispered strange things and walked away without answers. I was the woman who asked the questions, found the truth, and burned down every lie with evidence, strategy, and silence. Sometimes I wonder if Eric ever understood what he lost. Not just the relationship, but the version of me who trusted him without hesitation. The woman who believed in the story he told, the future he promised, the man he claimed to be. I think about that and then let it go, because revenge doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is becoming the version of yourself they were never worthy of in the first place. Now, when I walk into meetings, I don't shrink to make others comfortable. I don't second-guess my instincts. I've earned every room I enter. And the funny part? The people who replaced me, who thought I was disposable, who lied and schemed and manipulated to climb a ladder I built, they ended up exactly where they deserved to be. Behind me, I didn't need to ruin them. I just needed to survive them. And I did. Better than they ever expected.